So you asked if I was like in jubilation or not. I was like, I didn't understand. That was
Like,
the
how
whole
could
thing.
this 18 years, like,
Exactly. I was like,
yeah,
are you sure? That was my first question to the
yeah,
doctor was, are you sure? It wasn't like, oh, hallelujah, I'm saved. No, I was like, are you sure? Like, I've been
right.
doing this for all this time. Are you really sure?
All right, we are live. At least that's what it's saying. It's my first time live. Welcome to the Ignition Path podcast. My name's Kyle Goodknight, and this is my first live for Ignition Path. I'm trying to see where it's at in the world. I don't know if it's posting to anywhere yet. I'm kind of keeping track of it on my other screen here. But I've got Dwayne Morton with me tonight to come on and test out this live. It did say, Dwayne, when I clicked on live, it said one of them was not available, and I believe it's my Instagram. I don't think I have my Instagram set up properly, but that's okay. That's why we're doing this. We're just we're messing around and trying to figure it out. Dwayne, what's going on, man?
Man, a lot of really cool stuff, a lot of cool projects I have. Most of them I cannot speak about.
Right. I know. We've been talking about them offline. We're not going to go public with it. First of all, tell everybody who you are, what you do, and what you're, I see down here on your name here, Show Up to Win. We talked about that. What a great name for potentially your podcast that we're talking about. Oh, was I allowed to say that?
Yeah, you can go ahead and say that part. I mean, yeah, it was kind of supposed to be kept in wraps, but we'll let it go.
We'll see. He's not settled on a name yet, or a time frame, but it's coming.
Right, absolutely, it's definitely coming. So I'm Dwayne Morton. I'm a former international basketball player who has been through a couple of really tough challenges, and so I've been able to overcome them, and so that's how I came up with the program Show Up to Win. And so the two challenges were a police shooting that I was a bystander that happened 3 years ago, and then being diagnosed for 18 years and then suddenly find out March of last year that, hey, just kidding, you're just misdiagnosed and you have sleep apnea. So just kind of get my life back together. And yeah, exactly.
How long were you diagnosed with blood cancer?
Oh man, it was 18 years.
18 years.
18 years. Yeah, there's a lot of
nuts.
life, man. A lot of life that but here's the thing, Kyle, is that I'm in such a good place. I'm not really as worried about it as like how you would think I would be. I'm really just into this spot where I'm just trying to worry about thriving rather than just surviving. And so for those 18 years I was just surviving. But now I'm really looking, so now I'm looking to thrive. Like I'm looking for business deals and sponsorships for podcasts. There you go. I mentioned a podcast again.
Now it's it's not all on me. Yeah.
Right. It's not all on you this time. And then, my signature program, Show Up to Win. Like it's going to be it's my blood, sweat, tears, man.
That's awesome.
If I had to go through all of this to have this program and to make the impact I believe I'll be able to make, it's all going to be worth it. I was, one thing I'll tell you that I don't think I've told you before is, I've been told I was a really good speaker when I was younger, like 19, 20 years old. Like, hey, you should be a speaker. I was like, I don't want to speak. Why am I to do that?
What do I got to say?
Exactly. I was just real quiet person and just didn't have I had a lot to say, but I would only say it to my friends. The other thing is I didn't believe there would be anyone that would be wanting to listen. And so, yeah. And
and that was a little bit of my challenge when I first started podcasting. I started podcasting originally with someone who hired me to do voiceover work, right? And for their intros and outros. And then he's like, hey, you need to come on and be a guest. You got a lot of good insights, and let's create a new podcast for sports. And I was like, nah, I don't want to be a host. And this was like 5 years ago. We were doing video podcast even back then, before like they're really getting popular now. And so I always felt that video is, even 5 years ago, video is king. I mean, YouTube proves that. But it was one of those things where they got me on as a co-host. We started having fun, and then I learned more and more. And then I helped somebody else with a podcast and was a co-host with them, and learned a little bit more. And then, eventually I got to the point where my podcasting days were pretty much, I thought, over, and I was creating a course for mental health with the first responders, and I kind of, something at the back of me was saying I wasn't doing enough, and so I was like, crap, I can start a podcast about this and invite people on to talk about first responders, talk about, mental health, talk about procedures, talk about, anything that would help, not in therapies, for lack of better terms, or different options to deal with our mental health as first responders. And it took off, and there's, we're possibly getting ready to rebrand that one soon. More news to come on that. And then the Ignition Path podcast to spread my wings for my business, which is podcast production and voiceover work. And I've been doing that now. And I met you through a networking event with someone else that introduced us. I think it was Michelle, who introduced me to, I think, 85 people that night. And that was all online through Facebook Messenger, not at a real place, not at one-on-one with each other. But nonetheless, you and I met and hit it off. We got a good sports background. There's somebody I need to introduce you to. I think you'd be a great guest on his podcast, dude, to talk about sports. It's my buddy Paul, well, my cousin-in-law, I should say, my wife's cousin, her husband. He runs a paranormal podcast, which is really cool, and he goes live like 2 times a week on that. And he just kicked back up his sports live podcast that goes live every Monday night. It was live a couple hours ago, so I'll definitely hook you up with him and get you on there, because
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a big basketball fan, but you know what? That's why you would come on. You'd be a specialist,
Absolutely. Well, that's the thing is, like, I'm a really big baseball fan.
Oh, really? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
No,
I
but
don't
I'm
like
just saying,
baseball.
like, I've always been a really big baseball fan. And honestly, Kyle, that's actually where it got me more into the mental part of the game.
Right.
Was the baseball and the pitching and catching part. There's such a big chess game every time.
Oh, I bet.
Every batter and stuff like that. So I think that's actually part of where I started picking up on the mental part.
Right. That's great. Yeah, I mean, I loved playing softball back in the day. I was a decent baseball fan back in high school and college, but it wasn't one of those things where baseball was anything that I died for, and
Right.
I probably should have started playing baseball when I was younger, because I was really good at batting for softball, at least. I know it's a different speed and whatnot, but I always had good, and I can hit a golf ball pretty far too. I've got that good hand speed, or that club speed, as they call it, or bat speed. I've always had good bat speed and club speed. I had, home run power when it came to softball, and I'm not a very big guy. I'm like 5'10", I mean, I'm not muscular. Right. I just had good, and I think it came from throwing discus as a track guy in high school.
That actually makes sense because of you using the flexibility and stuff like that. So I played a lot of softball.
You can wind your body up. I mean, I knew how to wind my body up, and that's all it is when it comes, and how to explode. Like when you're throwing a discus, you wind your body up and then you explode. And that whole golfing is an explosion, and that all those muscles have that explosion power. And when it came to softball and golf, if I can hit my golf ball straight, I can pretty much outdrive any one of my friends, including those that are like 6'4" and have clubs that are ginormous. Yeah.
Well, the whole thing is you know how to use your core.
Yeah.
That's the thing with that sport. So with softball, Kyle, I actually know a lot of really good softball players.
Oh, really?
Like, yeah, I mean, like people that actually played like upper level, like professional. Yes.
Wow.
There's a lot of people in Kentucky in Tennessee that play a lot of that, get flown around and stuff like that. I don't know how it works anymore.
Oh, yeah, I don't either. There's a lot of that stuff here in Ohio too, but I'm not that level at all. No.
No, but my friends are. That's the thing. I was just saying,
Gotcha.
like my friends are, and then we played in a city league where we destroyed everybody. Shout out to the Misfits softball. So
my softball team was called Da Boys, DABOYZ. That was my college softball team that I put together in my local town. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
there was so much. We had so much fun doing that. So much.
Oh yeah,
fun. I miss it.
It's
I can't
always
throw.
fun.
I can't throw now. Ever since my shoulder surgeries, I can't throw. So I could probably pitch, but if a ball was hit back to me, I'd have to underhand throw it to first base. I couldn't like I used to be able to throw people out from, outfield, but I can't do that anymore.
Right. So, how's our live going?
It's going. That's what I'm looking at. We're finally live over here. It had a little bit of a lag until it got shown, but it's on YouTube.
Cool.
It is not on Facebook. That's not connected. So yeah.
Congratulations on your first live going.
Yeah. I've got one watching, which I think is me on my other monitor.
Nice. Doesn't matter.
Hey, you got to start somewhere, right? You can't climb to the top if you don't start at the bottom.
Right. Yeah, no, I think what's beautiful about podcasting is just being able to have a conversation from anywhere in the world with someone.
Yeah. And meet people like that you would have not normally met, I met this lady today out in L.A. Oh, my God. It was supposed to be a half-an-hour meeting. We talked for like almost 2 hours. We just had so much in common. She's 70 years old. She was so sharp. I'm like, she's going to start podcasting. It's so great, and I'm sitting there talking. We're sharing ideas and coming up with things and creating. And I'm like, this is so cool. I can't wait to have her come on my podcast.
Yeah, so for me is like I've guested on a couple of people from like overseas and stuff, and it's just like sitting in the living room and having a conversation with them. It's amazing like what technology is able to do now.
Yeah, exactly. Well, too, and for someone like yourself who's kind of, and like, not to get too personal here, because, definitely stop me if we start to, but, when I first met you, we kind of shared each other's stories. You kind of know my backstory. I kind of know a little bit of your backstory. Yeah. And just, to know what you went through with the, the blood cancer and blood cancer, blood disease, which one?
No, so it was a blood disease that turns into a blood cancer.
Okay.
And
okay.
It never just got classified.
Right.
And that makes sense. They never classified it.
Right. Right.
But everybody that I was around was like, it's a blood cancer.
Gotcha. Well, when you first told me that story and then you told me, you're like, oh, that's horrible. But then you were like, yeah, I was misdiagnosed for 18 years. I'm like, oh my God, that's horrible. And then, and where that can take you, not only through the process of knowing that you have a, impending doom blood cancer, that I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine what mental state you were in during all of that. And then to come find out that you're misdiagnosed, then what kind of mental status that had on you. You know what I mean? And for you to podcast and get out there and do what you're doing and want to help others, that just, is that part of what you're doing for like healing yourself, is to share with others, or like talk a little bit about that?
That's a really good question. And Kyle, I don't think I've been asked that question either. That's kind of funny.
Well, I'm pretty good at interviews. No, I'm just
right. No, but so I think it has been therapeutic, but I feel like it's also given me a chance to let people know where my mindset was, even in my worst spot. And like, I've had people who are like, you didn't seem like you had that mindset. And I was like, no, because you didn't understand. I was planning for a future without having a future. But I was planning for a legacy. Yeah. Because I knew that I was going to pass away. I wanted something for other people to take away. And that was the struggle. The struggle wasn't just that part. The struggle was I had to get a handicap parking tag. Like I had struggles going and getting groceries. Like these are real struggles that like everyday people. I will share this one story. I went to Kroger one time, parked at a handicap parking tag, like put the tag up, got out of the car, and the lady threw a Campbell's can at me and was like, "You don't
threw it at you? What do you mean?"
Yeah, no, like she out of her buggy took a Campbell of like a can of like Campbell soup and threw it at me, like chunked it at me. Fuck. Yes, but that's because I looked. Dude, I was athletic looking still for like the whole time. Like that's the whole thing. I did not look unhealthy. But dude, I couldn't walk around the grocery store by myself like without just like losing my breath. Like that's the thing is like breathing
because of like, So what was it misdiagnosed as then?
So it was just so the name of what I was polycythemia, but they were
Okay.
going to say that I was going to have it very quickly because of the way my blood cells were extremely they were extremely big. I can't think of the other word for it, but they were enlarged. They were extremely
Okay.
enlarged. They would keep asking me if I had done steroids. And I was
Okay,
like,
so
no,
I'm looking it up right now. It's abnormally high number of red blood cells. I'm medical, so I've
yeah.
never heard of that before. So, but I understand like medical terminology for the
So
most part. So, yeah, so it's a abnormally high number of red blood cells, which probably could lead to clotting disorders and so many other things.
exactly. So here's the other part. This is the
Yeah,
way it was.
thickens the blood. Yeah.
This is the way it was described to me. Is think about a barge down the river. If there's like 2 or 3 wide, it can still flow pretty well. But mine was like 10 wide.
Yeah.
So like
Clink,
so
clink, 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 clink.
right. But also here's another thing. At 29 years old, I was starting to like have memory lapses because the oxygen wasn't getting into my blood, into my brain.
Yeah. Fatigue, headache, dizziness, shortness of breath, redness of skin. Did you have that?
A little bit,
Itching.
but it was mostly like on my chest. I didn't get the itching as much,
Okay.
but
Thick
no,
blood
there was
that
some
may
different.
clot easily. Okay.
Yeah. So I was diagnosed with that, where
Okay.
all I had was sleep apnea. Think about that.
So okay, so this wasn't actually happening to you, but this is what they pegged you as. So did you have to
Right.
get like blood work all the time and all that good stuff?
So I did go get blood work. My treatment, thank God, was not any pharmaceuticals. It was phlebotomies and just basically bloodletting, but it was very frequently. I like. I was gonna say but you can like see the scar like right now, probably not on camera, but
yeah,
like
yeah.
it looked like I was like a junkie. Like I had someone like, "Hey man, you look like you just shot up." I was like, "No, I just had blood like drawn like yesterday, and I just had it like a week ago." So, but that's the thing, man. Is like, Kyle, we just don't really know. We judge so much.
As humans, is that what you're saying?
It's just humans in general, and so that's the thing is, man. There's so much, like so many people were thinking like, "Oh, you're like," but I wasn't. I was just. The other thing is too is this is the other part when people talk about, like responsibility and ownership of it. Like I take responsibility and ownership of all of my stuff, but like everything that's happened to me has never been my fault. I mean,
Right.
so that is very difficult when you're not able to say, okay, I chose this.
Right.
I didn't choose it. I didn't choose the other shooting either. So that was the other part. And so I get asked that all the time.
Yeah, we'll get into that. That's dude, and you didn't tell me that story the first time we met either. And then you're like you said something about when you were going on podcasts and that you were talking about the shooting, and I'm like, you never say anything about shooting. That'd be a pretty important thing to talk about. So
Yeah,
but let's
so
we'll get
can
into
dive
that.
in-
We'll get into that.
we can
So,
dive into that too, but like, so that's the thing is I was dealing with that and then that happened.
yeah. Oh, you were dealing with the misdiagnosis,
No,
and then that happened.
I was still dealing with the diagnosis.
Oh, with the actual diagnosis.
I was
Okay.
just misdiagnosed and it's 11 months ago.
Wow.
It hasn't even been a full
Wow.
year yet.
So,
Yes.
okay, I've got, I mean,
Yeah.
my medical doctors won't like this question, but so are you suing anybody? I mean, are you like,
No, so
is
here's
there
the
any
thing.
is there any malpractice involved with this?
Dude, I have talked to attorneys and they're like, I would be suing and I would be taking $10 to get $6 or $8 back. It doesn't make sense
It doesn't
financially.
make sense. Okay.
But also, guess what? Here's the other aspect of it is the person who would get paid first is the insurance company because they did falsified claims.
They did?
No, I mean, like I'm just saying the
Oh.
insurance companies would get first dibs on the money. If I sue,
Okay.
they get first part of the money because they paid
Oh,
falsified
because
claims.
because they paid for all that stuff with the falsified claims from the other people. I got you.
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow. Interesting. Crazy.
But, I was extremely lucky. I've had some really good mentors that really helped me kind of keep my stuff together. But like,
Yeah. Oh,
I've
if it
always
wasn't for
had
mentors, I wouldn't be where I'm at.
no. So Kyle, I don't know if I've ever told you, but like my mentor in Louisville was mentored by Jim Rohn.
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that one of the first times we talked, but that's really cool because we all learn stuff from different people, and I was on a call earlier tonight, and this lady's trying to get her business / passion off the ground at 70 years old. I mentioned that earlier. And we started diving deep into, because she couldn't find her niche. And I'm like, she goes, I want to help everybody. I'm like, no. Yes, that's the goal, but you got to start somewhere. You got to start someplace small, and you have to think of who is that finite niche. You have to have that, like, dive deep into your whys. And I put her through what they call the 7 steps of, I can't remember, it was from Tony Robbins or something, but there's a path that you can ask questions like up to 7 times.
Oh, the 7 steps, yeah.
Yeah.
When you're like the 7 degrees,
7 degrees. Yeah. So, and it's really, honestly, all it is after you ask the first question and they start talking, once they're done with that thought, it's, well, why? Essentially, like, okay, and then you take something out of that why and say, okay, dive deeper on this word. And then they dive deeper on that word. And typically by the time you get done with the 5th or 6th step, you're in tears. And when you get to 7 or 8, sometimes it goes longer than 8. But by the time you get to those lower levels where you've really found out your why and your passion, you're just like, oh my God, I got to do this. It's like, I mean, I know that they put me through it when I was going through their program, and it's just like, man, I know my why now, and sometimes you find out your why, and then you go start to strive for it, and then you get someone that says, well, let's do the 7 layers again, and you're like, I've already done the 7 layers, like, but let's do it again, and you do it again, and you find out that there's even a deeper passion lower, and then that really drives you. So
so I believe that is a really great modality for just anything. Is just take it 7 layers deep. Anything.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, think about it, because the number 7 is pretty powerful anyway.
Oh, huge. Yeah.
Right?
Very powerful.
Right. And you take that.
I've got a numerologist that came on one of my shows, and I said, tell me more about the number 7. She's like, you don't have enough time. No.
Right. But also, here's the thing, Kyle, is that you're doing it so many times that you're breaking it down, and you're having to break it down to even more complex, and then it's like turns into more complex because you're like, oh, that's also the reason.
Yeah,
and so,
exactly.
Yeah, it's like a snowball. I mean, it's with anything,
very much a snowball
right?
effect. Yeah,
it's with anything. So if someone asks me why I love basketball, well, I played as a kid. Okay, cool. Well, why did you play as a kid?
Why'd you play?
Well, I was by myself, right?
Yeah. Well, why were you by yourself? Well, mom and dad worked. Yeah, and you go deeper,
right.
deeper.
I was at my grandparents.
Yeah.
See, it just keeps on rolling, and so
Right.
that's the thing is when you really can get into those type of conversations, that's where it gets very deep.
Yeah,
it gets more intense too.
And that, when you mentioned Jim Rohn, your mentor is Jim Rohn, was a mentor of Jim Rohn's. This lady who I was talking with, she's like, "Oh my God, Kyle, you're so amazing. I've never, I've had so many people that I've talked to, and you just got so much information." I'm like, "This is not my information. I'm just regurgitating it." But that's what our mentors do. That's the point I'm trying to get to is we take what we learn from our mentors and we put it into our own life, and then regurgitate it in a way that someone can, feel like if you truly learned what your mentor taught you, when you try to teach it or explain it to someone new, they think it's yours, and you're like, no, hold on, it's not mine. Like maybe a little aspect of or a story is mine, but the concept is not mine, and that's what's great about mentors is we learn from such great mentors. And we just take a piece of them, and then we give more pieces to other people when we pass on what we learned.
Yep. So the thing is the lesson is, when you're able to teach it, that's when you truly learn it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Well, we got our first chat. We got Nicholas Comstock is on the chat.
Oh, what's up?
Fantastic. So Nicholas is another client of mine, becoming a very good friend of mine locally here in Columbus, and he's a disabled individual who was told that he would never live on his own, never have a relationship, and never hold a job. So he met me, and we started talking about stuff, and I said, hey, you have a really cool story. Would you want to do a podcast? He's like, oh my gosh, I've been told so many times, but I don't know how to do it. He's legally blind. This is all stuff that Nicholas and I have talked about. He's one of those guys that he doesn't want anybody to feel pity for him. He is a funny motherfucker. He really is. He cracks me up every time I talk to him. He has such a great sense of humor, and just we just hit it off the first time we ever met. And he's a great guy. I love him to death. And everybody's gonna be seeing more about Nicholas soon. He's gonna come on my podcast. Probably, I've told him that I don't want him to come on a normal podcast. I want him to come on as a live, like we're doing now, Dwayne. So we will have Nicholas on as a live someday, and everybody will get to meet him.
So I understand a lot with what Nicholas is saying. Like, he doesn't want people to pity him. Like, all those type of things were what I was doing. Yeah. I mean, so I think it's very important to understand why these people were like that, or why we're like that.
Yeah.
And so for him to have a podcast is actually a really...
Oh, it's given him so... I mean, he'll tell you, it's given him so much... he feels worthy. That's one of the words he used with me one time. He's like, I'm doing this... He was like only maybe 2 or 3 episodes in. He's like, you don't understand, Kyle, how empowering this is. That's the word, empowering. He's like, this is so... He feels like, I feel like I finally have a voice. And, you know, his big claim is he states, what does he state in his podcast? He says he's a mentally or physically disabled, but mentally enabled. And that's exactly what he is. And, you know, family members have written him off. Luckily, he has one family member that's very supportive. But, you know, it's one of those things where just the stories that he tells me of caregivers, of their some caregivers, their neglect, and then teaching caregivers how to caregive better. Like, he actually did a class on that, and he actually has he wants to write an ebook on caregiving, and I'm like, yeah, let's do it, you know. So we've got so many ideas for him. He's going to be in a book. He's going to have a chapter in a conglomerate book that's going to be out there in the world, so we'll be able to talk about that. I'll probably have him on a couple of times, especially when that book gets to be promoted.
Yeah.
But yeah, so great. Thanks, Nick, for coming on and stopping in the chat. Like I said, we'll get you on live here soon. But back to Dwayne here. So now let's pivot away. So you went through this time of mixed diagnosis for 18 years of an impending doom, blood cancer.
So I didn't go through it until March. But like, if you're going to ask about the shooting, think about it. I was dealing with 2 things at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, that's the whole thing. Is like, whenever people ask me, they're like, well, you're misdiagnosed, so like, but during that time period, I didn't know that. Gotcha.
So you didn't realize you were misdiagnosed. You were just going through the process of the blood cancer, and
Yes.
then the shooting happened, and
Yep.
then it was a little bit after that you found out you were misdiagnosed. So you're still
Actually,
dealing with the.
It was 2 years. It was 2 years,
but that's
between.
still a very short period of time in the grand scheme of things of dealing with trauma. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about the shooting. So this is one of those, you're meant for greatness because of what happened to you. You weren't taken off this earth that day, and that had to be something that inside of you eventually once you had the, you know, why did this happen to me questions probably. But go ahead and tell the story, and then we'll get into those questions.
So I have to like preface this. There was an officer who is a friend of a bunch of my friends who was murdered that day. So like, I never want to lose sight of that.
Okay.
What happened was me and my niece went to go get ice cream. Okay. And I had some medical issues not related to either. I had taken some time to where I was like eating very healthy. I wanted to take her to get ice cream. And we went to the bank for my dad. Again, here's the thing about ownership. I had 2 choices. I made a decision. I could have went to the bank for second or got the ice cream first. I decided to get the ice cream last. So I just want to let you know, like, I feel ownership of how some of these things happen.
The chain of events, right?
The chain of events, yes, thank you. So we left the bank. I took a right, and normally I drive in the right lane until later on I drive into the left lane. For some reason, I didn't. Oh, by the way, I've got to tell you, I was driving my dad's truck.
Okay.
I have a SUV, and the tire pressure was down. There was an issue with the tire pressure gauge, and I didn't want to get stuck without with the tire going low, especially with my little niece in the back seat. And so, for about 2 weeks, I've been driving my dad's truck. Probably about 2 or 3 days before that, my dad actually said, "Hey, why are you driving my truck?" He's like, "Why don't you just drive your SUV?" That day, I drove his truck. If I would not have been driving his truck, I would not be here. For sure.
Oh,
yes.
Where it entered and the level and yeah.
Right, exactly. Where that C-pillar is, yes.
Oh, because it hit that thicker C-pillar.
Yes. So, as I left the bank, I take a right. Like I said, I usually drive a right lane. I didn't. I went to the left lane, and I stayed in that left lane. The sheriff office and the police station is on the left-hand side. Sorry, I'm like trying to get my hand on it. It's on the left-hand side. And I saw people that were in a triangle formation. So a triangle formation like this. Mm-hmm. There was 2 officers, and then there was the criminal. Okay. And I'm going in more detail than I normally do just because this is with you, so it's a little bit different.
First responder, yeah.
Right. So what happened was the police officer did not pat down the criminal.
Okay.
The criminal was detained and questioned. And like there was a big, huge investigation. Like all these are facts, okay? Facts. Right. The criminal had a knife that was attached to a rope around his neck. Okay? So someone did not do their job. That's all I'm going to say. And, it's in court right now. They're doing all these lawsuits. So, all right. The criminal took a hidden gun out of his waistband and shot the police officer point blank. Tragically killing this guy who was friends of all my friends. Okay. And I kind of know of him. I don't know him. Okay. So another police officer and the criminal were in a shootout. I'm driving by as this happens. The truck gets hit by a stray bullet. Hits the C-pillar. If it would have been an 1/8 of an inch to the left, it takes me out. If it goes an 1/8 of an inch to the right, God forbid, it would have taken out my niece. Damn. Who was 3 years old at the time. So, like, truly a miracle happened that day. Truly, truly a miracle happened. The other part is, I'll just kind of break it all down, is I thought the truck in front of me is a big utility truck. I thought it backfired. My niece actually asked, we heard a pop. She is like, "What's that?" And I was like, that truck back. I didn't get the fired part out. And then I heard the rest of the shots. Yes. And then I heard the one that hit the truck. And I was like, oh. Okay.
Were you driving still or were you sitting still?
No, I'm driving.
Okay.
45 mile an hour.
Okay. That was my next question.
Yes, 45 mile an hour. So I do the speed limit pretty much. The other thing is like I could have passed the utility vehicle if I would have moved the truck. Hindsight's, we don't have to talk about that. But like, truly, the miracle happened by the bullet hitting the C-pillar. And as you know, so it's a Chevrolet Avalanche truck. There's not a lot of metal on those things.
No, it's a lot of
stop
plastic.
A bullet.
Yeah. A lot
right,
of plastic,
but that would stop a bullet.
Right.
That would stop a bullet. And so, yeah, man, I'm very fortunate to be here. And there's some more things that transpired, but like I'll just give you the basic facts. I pull into another dealership. I park the truck. I get out. I call my dad. I'm like, hey, I need you to come get my niece and come get the kid. I think the truck's gonna be impounded because I'm like, I know that it got hit. I get outside. I'm looking down. I'm thinking, oh, it probably hit the truck bed. Can't find it. I'm thinking, well, it probably hit the undercarriage. Not looking up yet. I start going toward the bed of the truck, and then I see the bullet hole. And then I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
And also, because of me with athletics, I knew I had to control my breath. I had to stay calm, because if I didn't stay calm, then I would freak out. And so that was the whole thing. Like, the people at the dealership could not believe how calm I was, how I was dealing with stuff. And so after the police shooting, or after the whole thing, I got to my house. Of course, I'm like freaking out, but I'm not like freaking out, if that makes sense. There was a water bottle that night that popped. Like, you know how like your water bottles will like pop when, yeah. And I almost broke my face because I like heard the pop and like moved and hit the wall. Yeah. I mean, I call my friend who has done 3 or 4 tours in Iraq, and I'm like, hey, bud, I was like, how did you deal with getting shot at? And he's like, hey, bro, I've never been shot at in my entire life. And that's when I knew, okay, I'm in the ocean and the deep water with all the sharks.
Right.
And that was truly where I was like.
Did they ever determine if it was a stray bullet from the police officer or from the suspect?
Kyle, that's a great question. And the bullet was stuck in the truck. We had the police take it out. I'm pretty sure I know where it came from, but also I don't have that 100%, so I'd rather not make a statement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But it's just there was a lot of like fumbles. There was a ton of fumbles.
And the tragic, thank God that you and your niece are alive. But
right.
The tragedy is that they, that suspect felt that he had to take the life of a police officer for, didn't have to happen, so.
And think about this, Kyle. The whole entire time he has a gun, so you know he's thinking it.
Yeah.
He's thinking, hey, I get outside, I can shoot myself free or whatever. I mean.
Yeah, you never know what's going through their minds.
Yeah, and so. But yeah, man, it like it was a long ordeal. I went to talk therapy for 2 years, pretty much twice a week. So I mean, like I was doing anything and everything, but man, I was still struggling with PTSD and survivor's guilt.
Yeah.
Now, other thing is, this happened in 2022.
Okay. So right in the middle of COVID. Yeah.
Well, no. So 2022. And I was given 15 years in 2006. So I thought my time was up.
Okay.
So that's where the survivor's guilt part comes up too. Right.
Oh, yeah, because at the time you're still thinking that you've got this impending doom blood disease. Right.
So I'm like, okay, that doesn't make any sense.
Jeez.
So then we roll around to March of 2024 where I find out I'm misdiagnosed.
Yeah.
Then it like makes
you're coming up
way
on a year.
more.
Yeah.
Yes, it makes way more sense.
So yeah, okay. So now let's go back. So let's go back to that day that you were misdiagnosed. Like, was it like extreme, jubilation? Was there anger? Like, did you go through the levels of grief? I mean, like what?
I mean, the levels of grief, most definitely. So what I'm gonna tell you is for the. Let me adjust my microphone. So. When I went into the doctor's office, he told me, he said, this is going to be really hard for you and really hard for me. And I was like, how's that? Right. First of all, this is a brand new doctor. I had never seen him before. My doctor, my oncologist that had seen me, he moved to Chicago. So this is a brand new guy. And he's like, dude, I feel like you have either COPD or sleep apnea. He's like, you don't have this. And he like explained it, and he asked me like different tests I had taken, And they basically had put me in a box, Kyle, and then they didn't let me out of the box. I probably should have been released 8 or 9 years ago. After this one bone marrow test. This bone marrow test is where I should have been just released. But they didn't release me. And so so you asked if I was like in jubilation or not. I was like, I didn't understand. That was
like
the whole
how could
thing.
This 18 years, like
exactly. I was like, "Are you sure?" That was my first question to the doctor. Was, "Are you sure?" It wasn't like, "Oh, hallelujah, I'm saved." No, I was like, "Are you sure?" Like I've been doing this for all this time. Are you really sure? Because remember, I didn't trust him. I didn't know him. And so he was like, "Yeah." He's like, "I'm really sure." He's like, "I'm actually going to release you." He released me that day. I have never seen him again. I have never been back to another oncologist. But he told me, he was like, "I believe you have COPD or sleep apnea." And so through the next few days, like I went home, talked to my parents. We talked about it. They wanted to get a second opinion. I'm like, "No, don't want to get a second opinion."
Yeah, I don't want them telling me, "No, you really do." Yeah.
Right. And so the other thing is it was 4 days before my birthday. So it happened on March 8th.
Okay.
My birthday's March 12th. So
that's why we get along. We're Pisces on March 20th.
Okay. So that's the whole thing, man, is like, I was just like, okay, this is, so I wasn't like living it up. I was trying to figure it out still at that point. But I was like, okay, this is a early birthday present. But I'd been praying, but dude, I had been hitting my head on the pillow for probably all the way up to the shooting. Like if I would meet so many people like business wise, just the opportunity stuff. And I would be like, why did I meet this person? Because I can't do anything about it. I'm not able to use this. All this information.
Gosh.
All these connections that people have, all these millionaires with businesses and all these people who have like,
you kind of shot yourself in the foot because you felt like, well, I'm not going to be here.
Right. But they also knew that I was looking for legacy projects. Like that's the thing is they would come to me and they were like, I know you would really do really well with this.
Yeah.
Like you think you get a couple of your friends that would be interested. And that's what I would do. I talked to a bunch of my friends and dude, they just didn't have the mindset of like, hey, yeah, I'm willing to take this risk.
They didn't have the entrepreneurial mindset. I get it.
No, that was the other aspect of it. They didn't have the entrepreneurial mindset, but also when I feel like we had talked in the previous, like my parents owned a business. They were self-employed all throughout my life since I was like 4 years old. So I've always had that business mindset, always trying to figure out things, how it works, how the infrastructure works, the logistics, all of that is always fascinated me. But whenever I'd have conversations with people in business networking events, they would be like, how you know all this stuff? Like what? And then, I'd be like, but also you're seeing me as like a person with energy. I was not a person with energy, Kyle. I was like a zombie. Like, hey, how are you doing?
Those times.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was so tired.
Well, when I kind of want to ask you when was the basketball stuff? Because you said you were an international basketball player.
Yeah.
Was
so
that
19 years old.
Were you retired before you got diagnosed?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if this is like something that happened during basketball and then you had to go out.
No. So I played basketball overseas when I was 19 years old.
Okay.
So all this happened when I was 29.
Oh, okay. So you were well past it. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So just to give you the basketball part it was a very short period, very short, like 3-month period. And that's fine. Like I never thought I would play past high school. Like I just never did. That was my dream, to play past high school. And that's what happened. And I came home, signed with an agent. He was looking for me places to go play. It just didn't materialize, and that's fine. Like, I know I hit my ceiling, but when I hurt my knee and she was saying, hey, you're going to have knee replacement by your, like, in your mid-30s, I was like, nah. I was like, I'm done. There's other things in life I want, and I was trying to figure it out. And that's why I always tell people, when I was 29, I thought I had plenty of time to figure it out. So I wasn't, like, rushing to do stuff. I was like, oh, just, all this stuff will get figured out. Even, like girls to like marriage. I was like, I'm not even worried about this right now. I got like plenty of time. And so I think that's really the most important thing. The most important piece I hope most people take is that time doesn't wait.
Yeah.
And
nope. Sure doesn't.
Yep.
So
we're not promised anything.
Right. So when it comes to what you're doing now, what you're willing to speak on with, with that you've got a new lease on life in the last, you were misdiagnosed 18 years ago, almost 19 years ago now. You've gone through this near-death experience with a random act of violence, and survived through that, and all the aftermath of that trauma, and then 2 years later, you find out that you were misdiagnosed with this blood cancer, and it's really sleep apnea, which can be fixed with CPAP at night, and you feel great. So, and you probably have more energy now.
It was like a 2-day fix. It was like a 2-day fix.
Oh, I know. Trust me, I know all about CPAP. So it's one of those things where it's like, holy shit. So once that happened, so we're now almost a year since you got the misdiagnosis. March 8th will be 1 year since you got the re-diagnosis or the declassification of your disease. So, so talk about like when did it snap into your brain that you're like, wait a second, new lease on life, those things that I want to do, that legacy, I can actually go, I'm going to have the energy for it. I'm going to have the desire. And I know when I first met you, you weren't involved with as much stuff as you are now, and that's only been a couple of months. So it probably took a better part of the year for you to get like to this new place of acceptance, right?
Yeah. So in April was like, okay, this it's definitely sleep apnea, but there was like, I always tell people, I was 99% sure. It wasn't until September when I really was like, I'm 100% sure, because I saw the blood work. My blood went down. Like my thickness of my blood went down. And I don't mean like a little bit. My blood went from a specific number to a lower significant number over a 3-month period. I was like, okay, now I know I do have sleep apnea only. I don't have something else. And that was so like when I met you, I want to say like October, I think is when we met. October, November.
Yeah, probably about that, yeah.
I think it was late October.
Yeah.
And so, so I was just trying to figure all of it out. And I was like, I also like, I reached out to people who I like, to females that were like people who were like love interest that I was like, I would never thought I had the opportunity, because that was honestly the biggest thing for me was I didn't have wife and kids because I didn't want people to carry my burden. And I didn't want anything to happen because I was
genetic, you didn't want to pass it on. Yeah.
Yes. So that was the other part. At first it was 5 years and I was like, I'm done. Like, I'm going to go do bucket list stuff. And so in September, I reached out to this one person. We started talking. I'm not going into all of those details, but that was the whole thing. It was just like, hey, I'm healthy. See if this works. That was really where for about a month and a half, that's where my intention, my mindset space was just like,
rekindle relationships. Yeah.
Figure it out if this is like really what I feel like I want and what I need. And honestly, like after that didn't go as planned as well as I thought, that was like, okay. Then I started going like, okay, I'm looking for business stuff.
Right.
And, of course, January has been insane. But like even in November, I would just level up.
Yeah.
I would level up about every week. I would level up every week.
Yeah.
Where in January, it's like I level up every
day,
couple of days.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
day. I would say day. I mean, there's.
Well, you I started we've been talking about you coming on my podcast ever since the first day I met you, and then now here we are. It was late October. Now it's early February, and we're finally doing something, and we're doing it live because we're you and I are testing out the live on this platform, this Riverside that you'll be using for your stuff. So tell me a little bit about when you say you're leveling up, like what you're allowed to talk about in with your own timeline and launching, like what are some things that you're into, and then after that, tell people how they can get a hold of you with whatever it is, and then we'll wrap things up and we'll call it a show.
Yeah. So the best thing that happened, the best way as far as business was I started getting into looking into podcasting, and people were just like, they would see me on Zoom and they were like, you should be a podcast host. And then it was like people were comparing me to different podcasters and that we had the same type of, and then they were like, hey, your trajectory is like not at just the medium level, or like you're at the top level trajectory is what I've been told. And the other thing is like, I knew I had books in me, and I've been writing books. Books. I'm actually writing 2 right now, but it wasn't until certain people told me this. That's the other aspect. So it was like, if just some random Joe or Jane said it, okay, cool. But yeah, I'm just kind of not really thinking about that. But when the people who really, really knew business, but also really knew these different type things, when they brought it to my attention, then it was like, oh, okay, I am different. And, it's very similar to how sports, when people get recruited to go to different schools, sometimes they offer you a bunch of BS, and then sometimes they offer you and say, hey, I feel like you're a star. And that's how I feel. I feel like I'm a star. I don't feel
with
like
that new lease on life and
yes,
twice.
So that's what I'm saying is
okay, there's something I'm meant for greatness,
Yes, but also there's this part of me where I know I have this new lease on life, but I also have this part that other people don't have. And that's really what Show Up to Win's about. That's the program, the lifestyle brand that I came up with, is showing up with intention. I'm showing up with the intention of tonight, as we're talking on a podcast, of hosting my own podcast at some point. Mm-hmm. And through your service,
guidance,
I'll throw it out.
And help, and just mentorship,
right.
Yeah.
And so, but I think that's very important. Is but when you hear it from certain people, then you're like, oh, maybe I can do this.
Yeah.
And so the confidence just kept growing, and so business stuff, just I have a brand partnership before I had 5 podcasts. Not many people get to do that or have that, right?
Yeah.
I'm already monetized before I did 5 podcasts.
Right. That's great.
Right. And so, but that's the thing, Kyle, is that these stories gave me this incredible, I'm a tier 1 person. You're only going to get this story from one person.
Yeah.
Former international basketball player.
Yeah.
Misdiagnosis shooting. Yeah. And so that's the thing is when you look at it from there, and the fact that I know I'm just raw, I don't know what I'm doing.
Well,
I'm not.
I flew by the seat of my pants too,
right.
And I get so many compliments on interviews, and I'm like, I didn't feel like I felt like a blubbering idiot, and they're like, no, it was a great conversation, and I'm like, okay, maybe I am interesting. I don't know.
But that was the thing, Kyle. It was it just was these different things, but also I started having a passion for it. But once I was able to bring it into a purpose driven, that's where it really took off. But when it was just I'm not an ego person, even though I call myself a star and certain things. You just have to do that in athletics.
Well, you have to believe. You have to believe. There's a belief in yourself. Period. If you don't have belief in yourself, you're never going to amount to anything that you want to do. You have to have some. You have to have some. Gumption, if you will.
Right. And so for me is I'm doing the athletic part that I wanted to do. Also, I'm coaching a really good elite basketball player right now. I actually was working out with him today. That's the thing is what I've always wanted is what I'm doing right now.
Nice.
It just took me 18 years of misfortune to get there.
Yeah.
But like, and also, I don't believe things happen to me anymore. I don't think that these things happen for me. I think they happen through me. And what I'm saying is there's a lot of other people that would have faltered through this, but people are able to learn this lesson through me. And so I'm able to facilitate that to people, and it'll be in books. It'll be into different things. And so I know you asked about Show Up to Win. Show Up to Win is going to be launching hopefully by the end of the week.
Okay.
Yeah, no, like, yeah.
I put a little spark under you the other night when I showed you all the fun stuff inside of Riverside.
No, man, so like Show Up to Win has always been like, it's what I've been looking for.
Yeah.
When I was diagnosed.
Well, I can't believe Show Up to Win is it's like, it's a .com. It's not taken in the podcast world. You know, it's like,
mine.
What? That's so great. I mean, like,
yes.
like that is such a great flowing, you know, like Ignition Path. When I came across Ignition Path, and I'm like, how is this not taken? You know, like, this is awesome. It's totally makes sense. You know, what ignites your passion of your entrepreneurial path? You know, Ignition Path. It's like, you know, it's all in the name. And when it feels right, it happens. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I have some other ones too that'll go into like the business part.
Oh yeah. We talked about that. So
yeah. But Show Up to Win is just truly my program. I tell people it's so I can teach people how to overcome adversity in unlikely and untimely circumstances. I'm kind of expert. I've dealt with it twice, but also like I just want to pour into people and let them know like, hey, they can accomplish their dreams. There's probably a situation they're in right now where they feel stuck, and I know that feeling. But I also know what it takes to get out of it, and I also know what type of people can get out of it. And I think that like I can coach about anyone that is willing. I tell people I want people who are willing to do what other people are unwilling to do, and I can help you get wherever the hell you want.
Wow, that's awesome. So how do people get a hold of you, Dwayne?
So for the website, it's go to showuptowin.info, and that's with the number 2. And you put your information in. There's a contact form. Honestly, I tell everybody, if you put your phone number in, I might just call you and just find out like how I can be a service, how my program can help you, especially at the early stages. You know, I want to know the type of people that is looking to come into my program and how I can serve them the best. And then the other way, you know, of course, like you can catch me on Facebook. And
would you say it was showuptowin.com?
.info. No, the number
info.
2.
Okay.
Yes. And as soon as showuptowin.com releases the course, you'll get notified.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Fantastic. All right. Well, that'll be on the screen, and of course in the show notes. Showuptowin.info, and get a hold of Dwayne and have a conversation with him. He's got a couple other business things that are geared around Facebook and AI, which is really interesting. So if that's something that interests you, get a hold of him. Great conversation as always, Dwayne. I really appreciate your time and getting to know you even better. Learned a couple of things that I didn't know already with you from our other conversations tonight, and I really appreciate your time and really appreciate you hanging with me at 12:30 at night right now as we sign off. So,
oh wow, I didn't even realize it was that late. I mean, that's a wonderful thing.
I'm like, well, we've been on for almost an hour. It's a good time to wrap it up. And I look down, I'm like, oh, we started at 11:30. Oops.
Right. Well, also the other thing too, Kyle, is that like this is actually becoming a passion of mine, is being able to have these conversations and being able to help people. So yeah.
Fantastic. All right, brother. Well, thank you so much. And there's his website again to go find out how to get a hold of him. It's right there on the screen. And other than that, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to the Ignition Path podcast or the Ignition Path YouTube channel. If you heard something today that you have to share with someone, please don't hesitate. Hit that share button. Send that to that friend or that acquaintance that you need to have them hear this message. And let's spread the word and get to know people and even expand the networking involved with podcasting. So signing off, Dwayne, once again, thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Thanks for having me. Thanks for your listeners for listening to us.
Thank you for listening to Ignition Path, fueling the entrepreneurial fire.